Hello, ladies and gents. Welcome to CG Reaction. This is why the US Navy's dead railgun just fired again. Watch all Navy decoded. Yeah, railgun is one of those things that US Navy scrapped it because it was, just like littoral ships. Not that it didn't work. It didn't work the way they wanted to. Japan is doing a lot of things with the railgun. They even tested it in their ships. So I guess US Navy is like, you know what, let's do it. I guess US Navy saw Japan doing their things and they probably asked themselves, why are we not doing it? So they probably revamped that thing. So this video is going to be interesting. Let's watch this one. If you like my reaction, don't forget to like and subscribe so that way you can help out the channel by helping with the algorithm and things. And I'll know which type of videos to react to more. Let's watch this one.
Picture the White Sands Desert. Flat, white, silent. And bolted to a concrete pad in the middle of it, a machine that looks nothing like a cannon. Where a cannon would have a breech and a powder charge, this has two heavy copper rails running the length of the barrel, dead straight and parallel, fed by a bank of capacitors the size of a house, coiled to dump millions of amps in a single millisecond. Between them sits a slug of solid tungsten, waiting. This is the railgun, and it uses raw electricity.
Oh, look at, you see that? Look at those fans, those exhaust fans. I love it. The pressure spins the whole fans. Look at that. Those entire room has an increased pressure. What's this?
Solid tungsten, waiting. This is the railgun, and it uses raw electricity to throw a piece of metal faster than any shell a chemical gun has ever fired. Then it fires, and the desert flinches. The crack comes first, displaced air, louder than thunder. Then a streak of metal off the rails at Mach 7. No muzzle flash trailing it, no smoke, nothing left burning. February 2020.
Mach 7? Mach 7? What?
3 days of live fire, engineers from two Navy warfare centers reading strain gauges and thermal plots as the slug tears down range and the echo rolls out across the sand. Now here's the part that should stop you. This weapon was supposed to be dead. In 2021, after 15 years and more than $500 million, the United States Navy shut this exact program down for good. The hardware was crated and trucked into a storage yard in the New Mexico desert, the same desert it is now firing in, with a verdict attached that read, in effect, the physics does not work. You do not resurrect a weapon you yourself proved was impossible, not unless something changed. And here is the strangest detail of all. The thing everyone assumes got fixed, the barrel that destroyed itself, was never fixed the way you think. So why pull the corpse out of the warehouse and pull the trigger again? The office that signed off on these shots is called JHTO. Hold on to that name. We will come back to it. If you want to understand how the Navy actually thinks about the next war, not the press releases, the real calculus, this is the question to crack. Subscribe to Navy Decoded. We do not sell narratives here, we sell engineering. To understand why a dead weapon is suddenly sitting on the drawing board of the future, we have to start with the simplest question of all. What is this gun, really?
It's a railgun.
Strip away the science fiction marketing, and a railgun is almost insultingly simple in concept. Two parallel conducting rails, a projectile, or a conducting armature carrying it, bridged between them. Dump a current of millions of amps down one rail, through the armature, and back up the other, and you create a magnetic field of staggering intensity in the gap. The interaction between that field and the current shoves the armature forward. Lorentz force. The same principle that spins an electric motor, scaled up until it becomes a cannon. Nothing in the system burns, and that matters because a chemical gun lives under a hard ceiling. Expanding gas can only push a shell so fast, and we have been bumping against that limit for a century.
Basically, railgun is using electromagnetism. So it's what you think of when you think of modern tech. Think of emals, how emals are working and how it used to be steam. Now it's emals. This is similar thing, but in guns. In guns or cannons, you use gunpowder and chemical reaction to create pressure to push out the shell, right? Very crude old style in a way. It works, but it's very old style, just like steam. This is electromagnetism, right? Basically anything electric is the future. We've known this for like more than a century now. It's just applied here in the weapons now. Obviously, it's going to be hard to implement, but once you do it, like, yeah, this is probably the future, right? Laser is also electricity, so you get the point, right? That's where this is going.
The gun has no such ceiling. The projectile leaves the muzzle at Mach 7, nearly 8,000 feet per second.
Look at the wires.
At that speed, you do not need an explosive warhead. A solid tungsten slug arriving at Mach 7 delivers the energy of several pounds of high explosive through velocity alone. Pure kinetic kill.
Tungsten has the highest melting point, and that's the critical thing here. The more energy you pump, E equals mc square, right? Energy, heat, it's all the same thing. So the more energy you shove into something, the more hotter it will get. So they're using tungsten, I'm guessing, because it has the highest melting point. So the projectile doesn't melt at intense energies. That's why they're using tungsten, I'm guessing.
And because the round carries no warhead and no propellant, the logistics dream writes itself. A warship that no longer buries volatile magazines deep in its hull, that cannot suffer a chain detonation when it takes a hit, that fires ammunition costing a fraction of a missile. In the laboratory, it worked. At Dahlgren, Navy test guns reached 10.64 megajoules of muzzle energy in 2008, and 33 megajoules by 2010. The future looked like it had already arrived. Then it ran into a wall. And that wall is the first thing we have to dissect, because the reason they buried this weapon is the key to why they dug it back up.
It literally ran into a wall, but I'm guessing that's not what he's talking about here.
The railgun did not die for one reason. It died for three. Call them verdicts. The first verdict was the barrel. The same millions of amps that throw the slug also tear the gun apart. As current...
Oh, okay. Conventional 5-inch naval gun, 600 rounds. Railgun prototype, 12 to 24 rounds. Video games were not wrong. In video games, you have this kind of insane futuristic weapons. Gauss rifle, this and that. But usually it has very slow firing rate. They do that to balance the game, but apparently physics balance itself. Yeah, 12 to 24 rounds only. Makes sense.
Arcs across the rail surface, it superheats the metal into a film of plasma that erodes the bore almost instantly. A conventional 5-inch naval gun fires roughly 600 rounds before its barrel needs replacing. The railgun prototype was wrecking itself in 12 to 24 shots. The Navy's design goal, 10 rounds per minute sustained, was physically out of reach. The material...
Why can't you make the gun shell from tungsten, just like the actual projectile? It has the highest melting point, and if that melts, like, you probably can't do anything now.
The material could not shed heat fast enough to survive its own fire. The second verdict was power. To launch a single 32 megajoule shot, the ship has to store, compress, and release that energy in about a millisecond through Marx generators, pulse-forming networks, and banks of capacitors the size of rooms. Yeah. No destroyer afloat had the electrical plant to do it. None had the volume to carry the capacitors, or the cooling to recharge them in the seconds between shots. The weapon was an electrical glutton, and the fleet had nothing that could feed it.
How did Japan do it?
Was the quietest and the most decisive. Nobody needed it badly enough. In 2021, interceptor missiles still felt adequate. Budgets were flowing toward hypersonics and lasers. The railgun was an elegant answer to a problem the Pentagon did not yet feel as urgent. So they did the rational thing. They froze the program and trucked the hardware into the desert. Add the three together, and the railgun of 2021 was a weapon whose barrel could not survive, whose ship did not exist, and whose war had not yet arrived. It did not fail because the idea was wrong. It failed because it was early. So why didn't the Navy simply let it rust? Because what this gun promised was too valuable to leave buried. Look at what the weapon actually does, and the obsession starts to make sense. Start with reach. The program's target range was over 100 nautical miles, nearly 8 times the 13 nautical mile envelope of a 5-inch deck gun. A ship carrying this can put steel on a target long before that target can range the ship in return. Then add speed. A projectile that fast crosses that distance in well under a minute, and a flight time that short is something a maneuvering target, a drone, a cruise missile, simply cannot dodge.
Imagine that. A drone is coming and Railgun just completely shreds it because, first of all, the munition itself is much bigger for us, like something like Shahid drone. It would be overkill as hell, but imagine the precision. Because of Mach 7, it would be like instantaneous.
And the round is no longer a dumb slug. The guided projectiles built for this gun maneuver in flight, correcting their own trajectory in mid-course.
What?
One gun, 3 jobs. Air and missile defense, anti-ship strike, and shore bombardment. Work that used to demand 3 separate weapon systems collapses into a single barrel. But the real prize, the reason the Navy could not let it go, comes down to 2 numbers. Magazine depth. A slug is small and inert. A ship can stow them by the thousand, where a destroyer's vertical launch system holds just 96 missile cells, a fixed, finite number. In a saturation attack, that distinction is the line between fighting and dying. A magazine measured in thousands does not run dry in an afternoon. Then there is cost.
That is so true. It just if it has 100 nautical miles range and has a decent precision, on top of that, it can change course. Why do you need a cruise missile? Just load this up. There you go. I mean, yeah, there is like small physical issues of like it requiring a lot of power. You have like nuclear reactors. I guess you need to change the destroyers drastically. But you can put things like that. You know what? Bring back Zoom Vault destroyers. Why not? Fit them with this and a nuclear reactors. I'm pretty sure it has nuclear reactor, right? It's supposed to. And like create like coils and give it its own space in order to generate enough power from the nuclear reactor. I mean, you can't just plug nuclear reactor directly to the railgun. You need its whole system, but you can fit it. That destroyer basically has like a insane amount of like, reloading power.
A railgun shot runs somewhere between $25,000 and $85,000. Compare that to the math the fleet lives with today. An incoming Shahed-type drone costs the enemy around $35,000. And we answer it with an interceptor, a Patriot, or a Standard missile, costing $4 million and up. We win every engagement and lose the budget. Trade a Ferrari to kill a moped, often enough, and the arithmetic collapses long before the end.
Let's be honest, a lot of Ferraris kill moped all the time, because that's how that goes.
Does. The railgun flips that equation. It answers a $35,000 problem with a $35,000 shot. And when the cheap kinetic gun handles the saturation threat, the expensive missiles in the launch cells are preserved for the strikes that actually matter. Extend the same logic ashore, to a golden dome over Guam, over the homeland, and the railgun becomes a steel net that catches anything inbound at hypersonic speed.
General Atomics sounds like a company from Fallout, right? General Atomics, and then that 1950s music plays. I guess the same company like General Dynamics, right? Yeah, this is the same company but different name, I'm guessing. I don't know.
Protecting the bases an entire strategy depends on. That is why the third verdict, nobody needs it, was the first to fall. By 2025, against drone swarms engineered to bankrupt a fleet, the railgun was no longer a luxury. It was a matter of survival. But value does not erase a curse. The barrel still ate itself. And the breakthrough that finally solved it came from a direction no one in the railgun program was looking. Here is the twist. The breakthrough did not come from the railgun program at all. It came from an aircraft carrier. General Atomics, the company carrying the railgun torch, is also the prime contractor behind 2 of the strangest systems on the USS Gerald R. Ford. Emails, the electromagnetic catapult that flings a fully loaded strike fighter to...
It just makes sense. What do you mean, strangest? Emails, it just makes sense.
Flying speed in seconds by dumping up to 122 megajoules through a linear motor, and the advanced arresting gear that catches it coming back down. To build those, the company had to master the exact problems that were killing the railgun, managing extreme pulsed power, controlling enormous heat, finding switching materials and insulation that survive brutal electromagnetic fields. So they pulled it back. The advanced insulation and the current sharing architecture proven on the carrier's catapult were dragged across into the railgun's barrel.
I can already see it. There is this mechanism that diverts The same system from EMALS to like a railgun when needed on an aircraft carrier. Yeah, EMALS not going to work, but now you're using railguns. The same coils and same power delivery now going to work for the railgun. You could make that work.
The thermodynamic wall that had been declared impassable came down, not by attacking it head-on, but by borrowing the answer from a neighboring program that had already grown up. And the projectile learned to survive the same hell. On the company's 3 megajoule Blitzer launcher, rounds endured accelerations beyond 30,000 times gravity and multi-Tesla magnetic fields with their guidance electronics intact. Hardened against the electromagnetic violence of the launch, then steering themselves downrange afterward. The dumb slug had become the guided kinetic interceptor we described a moment ago. Now go back to that cold open.
I mean, this is basically a glide bomb, right? These are what the glide bombs are. You launch them and the kinetic energy, you just guide them with fins and things. These railguns could literally be glide bombs, but with a 100-mile range.
The railgun firing in the New Mexico desert in February 2025. That was never a weapons test. That was the clue JHTO left for us. The Joint Hypersonics Transition Office had found the gun a second career, a low-cost hypersonic accelerator, throwing a test payload to Mach 7 for the price of a single slug instead of tens of millions per full missile launch. Under that disguise, the Navy quietly resumed live fire to measure barrel wear, projectile stress, and power performance. The research tool cover bought the funding and the legitimacy to keep the hardware alive through the Valley of Death, buying time until a ship could catch up. That is why the corpse in the warehouse could pull its own trigger. The barrel survives, the round survives, the value is proven. Only one thing is still missing, a ship with enough power to feed it. The problem was that no existing hull could do it. A.R. Lee Burke, even in its latest Flight 3 form, is maxed out on space, power, and cooling. The future DDG-X destroyer was judged too small to carry both hypersonic missiles and a railgun. The weapon was homeless. In December 2025, that changed. The Navy unveiled a new class of guided missile battleship, the Trump class, designated BBG-X, roughly 35,000 tons, around 850 feet long. Lead ship USS Defiant, with a price tag north of $17 billion. And the decisive engineering call was the power plant. The early plan was conventional gas turbines. Then the planners ran the Pacific math, and they saw the trap. A 40,000-ton ship steaming above 30 knots, running in SPY-6 radar, feeding lasers in the hundreds of kilowatts, and recharging a 32 megajoule railgun has a bottomless appetite for energy.
So it's confirmed Trump class will have a railgun? Yeah. Trump, I mean, every headlines and every thumbnail of a video seen usually points to like Trump class is stupid. But if Trump class can do this, is that really stupid? Come on. I mean, that's just the gap that it's filling. Alibug destroyers are awesome, but they have real power limitations. You can barely fit one Helios on it without like draining everything. You don't have enough power to like add things. So Trump class might just be the thing where you put nuclear reactor on it and have 100 kilowatt laser weapons and a railgun. That's overpowered. That's insanely overpowered.
On gas turbines, that ship is chained to its fuel oilers. And in the Pacific, where the distances are enormous and adversary anti-ship ballistic missiles like the DF-21D and DF-26 are built specifically to hunt those oilers first, dependence on a fuel train is a fatal flaw. So they went nuclear. The A-1B reactor, the same core that drives the Ford-class carriers. Unlimited endurance means an unlimited electrical budget. For the first time, the railgun has a ship that can actually feed it. And now, the 3 technical pieces lock into place. A barrel that survives, a round that survives, and a hull that can power both. On engineering grounds, the railgun is finally feasible. But feasible is not the same as afloat. And here is the hard truth we owe you. That ship does not exist yet. The lead vessel, USS Defiant, has not had its keel laid. Construction is not slated to begin until 2028, and she would not put to sea until somewhere around 2036. The bill runs north of $17 billion for the first hull alone, better than $40 billion for the first 3. And there are serious people in Congress, inside the Navy itself, who call the whole thing a monument to the past, who argue the future belongs to cheap, expendable drone swarms, not a battleship resurrected out of the age of the dreadnought. They are not fools. Ambitious naval programs have died.
I still don't understand. Here's the whole picture. Here's the latest fringes of that picture, and people only see this and they think this is what it all is. These are the people who see cake, see the frosting on top of it, and they're like, frosting is the future. Just make the whole cake out of the frosting. Frosting alone means nothing. You need cake. You need middle part. Yes, future is about drones and things, but you still gonna need warships. You can't just look at Iran. Iran has done nothing but drones. What is happening to Iran? What is happening to Iran right now? They have no answer to American power. And Iran has all the drones in the world. Iran is a superpower when it comes to drones. Is that really helping them? So saying future is just about miniature things like drones and laser weapon, yeah, you still don't want to put everything aside, because you need meat of the things. You need powerhouse boats and destroyers. You still need interceptors, missiles. On top of that, you can add drones and lasers and railguns. So say, I'm sure somebody will cancel Trump class, and in turn will cancel railgun and everything. I can just see it already. I mean, if it's money issue, maybe, I don't know, 17 billion for one ship. Isn't that higher than the entire Ford class carrier? So maybe somebody will see oh, this is too much money. Maybe, but who knows? I don't know.
On the drawing board before. So will that ship actually arrive? Will we ever stand on a pier and watch a nuclear-powered battleship steam out to sea with a railgun bolted to her bow? Only time can answer that. And yet, whether or not USS Defiant ever touches the water, one thing is no longer in question. The value we laid out a moment ago was never America's secret, and the whole world is already racing for it. Japan took the lead while America was frozen.
Exactly.
Aboard the test ship JS Asuka in June and July of 2025, Japan's Defense Technology Agency fired a shipboard railgun more than 120 times with no rail erosion. And, for the first time anywhere on Earth, a ship-mounted railgun struck a moving target vessel at sea using pure kinetic energy. Read that again. The barrel problem that killed the American program, solved at sea by an ally. Their system is modest, around 5 megajoules, but the proof of life is undeniable. China is reaching higher. In July 2025, a Chinese engineering team published a design they call the X-Rail gun.
If China does it and you don't, all right.
4 rails instead of 2, a slug of roughly 130 pounds, Mach 7, a reach near 200 nautical miles. Their ambition is not point defense. It is to turn the railgun into a first-strike weapon aimed at carrier groups. For now, it lives on paper and in simulation, but the direction is unmistakable. That is the pressure. Japan has solved the barrel. China is chasing the offensive, and the United States holds the one thing neither of them has: a nuclear reactor large enough to feed a 32 megajoule gun indefinitely. The electromagnetic arms race has begun, and it has turned the railgun is feasible into the railgun is mandatory right now.
If you don't make Trump class and China has railguns, China will whip your ass. Because stopping a Mach 7 projectile towards your aircraft carrier is going to be insane. But if you already have Trump class with multiple railguns, you basically overpower by number alone. Even if you can't stop it, you can overwhelm it because you have more of it. So Japan already did it, right? The Japan is already testing it and successfully tested it. China is thinking about doing it. One thing about China is they accelerate the process, whether for good or bad, because usually things don't work, but they accelerate the process, so they'll probably do it faster. You need to make Trump class, and if not, at least fit railguns on aircraft carriers or something.
So close the loop. Go back to the desert and the question we started with. Why resurrect a weapon you already declared physically impossible? Because the weapon was never the impossible part. The timing was. The verdict that buried it in 2021 never actually said the idea was wrong. It said something quieter. Not yet. And 4 years later, that not yet simply ran out. This is the part the headlines miss. The Navy did not revive the railgun. The Navy waited for the railgun's moment to arrive, and that moment finally came. The weapon we buried in the New Mexico desert was never a failure. It was a deposit, a bet that the physics was sound and the moment would come. And in a quiet 3-day test at White Sands, with the rest of the world already racing, the Navy walked back into the warehouse to collect. That is not a comeback story. That is engineering patient enough to wait for its own time.
That is the story of America inventing something and not trusting it until other people do it and then rush to like put it out. If China has railguns and you don't, like that's a big issue, man. Mach 7, like how you gonna... Mach 7 is hypersonic. Aegis system is great, but like a pointed down railgun shooting towards your aircraft carrier, that's a problem. 200 nautical miles, what are you, high? How are you going to defend against that? You better have railguns by that point, man. If China has a railgun, you better have it. Oh, well, there you go. Why the US Navy's dead railgun just fired again? Yeah, because it's a railgun. It's the future. Future is here, apparently. This was Navy Decoded. If you like my next one, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.